We've dubbed it the Hermit Kingdom, of course. Western Australia is going to be remaining closed indefinitely after Premier Mark McGowan shifted the goalposts at the last minute last week. But a group of doctors, no less, is calling on McGowan to reinstate February 5 as the border reopening date. They've called his decision a betrayal, and they're fed up with misleading spin like this.
We are trying to protect our state from the worst excesses of what is going on in the eastern states. What's going on over there with massive death rates, huge hospitalisations, massive economic dislocation, businesses in all sorts of trouble, people staying home from work, kids not going to school.
I don't think that's an accurate picture of what's happening in the other states, Mark McGowan. Now, a petition with almost 6,000 signatures has been started by intensive care specialist Dr Luke Torre, and he joins me now live from Perth. Thanks for joining us, Luke. Tell us about why it would not endanger Western Australians if you opened that border on February the 5th.
I think the main thing I want to say, Chris, is that we are in a very good set of circumstances right now to reopen as was agreed. We have a 90% double vaccinated 12 and over population, the highest target the nation set, and we achieved it today on Australia Day. We also have a vulnerable population, most of whom have received their third jab. We're in the middle of a hot, dry summer, and we have the weaker variant in Omicron. And very importantly, we've got an obedient, compliant population who have followed the directions and the agreement of the Premier. That was all destroyed last Thursday night when he betrayed the people, went back on his word and cancelled the opening. And when you are betrayed, you feel disengagement, mistrust, and you don't wish to obey or listen to future direction. And that is incredibly important.
Look, your assessment of being prepared to open up is so right. It's so logical. It's so spot on. It's a case that's been arguing here and in the Australian for a long while, with those high vaccination rates, with the medical capacity available, in the height of summer, a mild variant. You know, it's the perfect situation in which to open up. And it's so heartening to hear medical specialists like yourself speaking up, because I know particularly in Perth it isn't easy. You get a lot of people trying to, disagree with you and slap you down. But the other point, though, is if you're opening up that border to the rest of Australia, the people coming in have a massively high vaccination rate. Most of them have been double jabbed, and a lot of them have had boosters as well.
You can't get in unless you're double vaccinated or triple. You can't get in unless you have a negative test before leaving and a negative test shortly after arriving. We're not asking for those restrictions to be removed. We're just saying, let these people freely cross their border. We have a state that has Omicron here right now. We have cases in the 20s and 30s right now. So it's not going to be the only way you can transmit the virus is letting these people in, letting other Australians come in and out of this state. The transmission has started, and this is really important for us as a society as a whole.
All right, you're an intensive care specialist. You know that when you open the borders, there will be more infection. It will spread, and you will get some pressure. Some people will end up in hospital, mainly the vulnerable, people who are elderly. You'll get more, at least initially, going through intensive care. It'll put pressure on your health system. Tell us how ready you are to cope with that. And also the obvious point, of course, that this is not an either-or game. I mean, that pressure will come eventually anyway. People are pretending you can stave that off forever. You can't. At some stage, the virus will have to come in and you'll be faced with those pressures, won't you?
That's exactly right. And we have a very good scenario at the moment we should accept rather than kick the can down the road, and we may not get those same conditions. Now, our health system has worked incredibly hard over 2 years to become ready for this virus, as every state did. And I know we're not perfect. If you scanned us from Wyndham to Esperance to Perth, you will find chinks in that armour. But a few more months will not solve all those chinks. And what we're seeing is that the health systems across the country are coping extremely well. Hospitals are not overwhelmed. People are not unnecessarily dying. Healthcare is being provided, and we have excellent treatments and people available. And we can't compare this to never opening up forever and waiting for COVID to vanish, because it never will, and no one believes that.
Well, you make a very important point about the season, because if he doesn't open up in February, you kick the can on towards getting towards winter and flu season, and then he'll quite rightly use that as not the ideal time to open up, and then you lose another year. Tell us about the damage that is being done in mental health, in social problems, in people not turning up for other medical checks and getting other treatments. So how can we measure the cost of the border being closed as against the cost of opening it?
It's such an important point. We hear so many medical advice based on COVID only and the specific effects of COVID and hospitalisation, but we never talk about the mental anguish. We never talk about anxiety and depression rates increasing in our society. We never talk about the fact that as we lose our social cohesion and isolation increases over here, we become more fearful as a people and less empathetic towards others. We see people calling for McGowan to keep the borders closed, while other people are heartbroken that they cannot see a dying loved one and miss that opportunity, that grandmothers can't hug their newborn grandchildren over East, and they miss that whole growth period of their life. And we never factor that into the modelling. We never assume that has any impact on health at all. And I'm just so fearful that we have a chief COVID officer, but not a chief health officer.
Yeah, well said, Luke. Congratulations on speaking out. Let's hope other medicos can join you and speak out, and you can get some sort of action there in the West.
Thank you, Chris.
That's Dr Luke Torre, who's an intensive care specialist in the West. You heard it. He could not have been clearer. He could not have made more sense.